Okay, let's talk about the three chords that are probably going to give you the hardest time on the ukulele. That's going to be E minor, B minor, and B flat major. If you've been playing for a while, you've probably already struggled with these or maybe even mastered them. But if you haven't, this video is made for you. So if you're tuned up and ready to go, let's get started. We're going to start with E minor, which is the easiest of the three chords we're going to be tackling today. The reason it's the easiest is because we don't use a bar. Of course, a bar is when we use one finger to play more than one string, like this. If you've got all your fingers in position, but it's still not coming out how you want, we need to troubleshoot a few things. So the first thing we're going to look at is the finger placement. The fundamental wisdom for finger placement is to have your finger be directly right planted next to the fret. Right, so for instance, right here you've got the first fret. So you don't want to be in the middle. You certainly don't want to be all the way to the left. You want to be right to the left of the fret wire. That's the first thing we're going to check. The second thing we're going to check, maybe it seems a bit basic, make sure your nails aren't too long. Some of us have very short, fat nail beds, like me, and I don't really have to worry about that so much, but if you have a nail that grows right to the edge, that could be keeping you from getting your finger in a good position. So the next piece of advice as far as finger placement is the point of contact. It's where the finger touches the string. You want it to be right here, directly below the nail. Not under the nail because that would be painful, but right below the nail, right kind of at the top of the finger pad. So let's go over those things so far. Let's try that with the first piece of advice. So we want to be on, right at the edge of the fret, right, as close as we can get to that fret. And we want our finger to be contacting the string right at the top of the finger pad. And if you have your finger in that position, your knuckle will naturally be in this nice arch, which is what we want if we're trying to keep our fingers from touching the other strings, which is one of the leading causes of a funky tone when you're playing chords. See if we can get all those in position. Our pointer finger right on the top of the finger pad, right next to the fret. Our middle finger, same deal, right at the top of the finger pad, right next to the fret. And our ring finger as well. If you've got all of these in position, each finger should only be touching the string that it's on. Now, why are we so concerned about the finger placement? So if we use like the fatter part of the pad, so I'm going to move my finger down and go like in the fatter, softer part of the pad. So now, since I'm not on the very tip of the finger, right under the nail, the pad of my finger is actually touching the string below it. That's giving kind of a funky tone. So if I readjust everything, everything's coming out super clear. One other little tip I can give you here is that we don't want our wrist to be raised up really high like this. I'm going to turn to the side so you can see. Right? This is going to cause strain in your wrist, and it's also going to pull the fingers down into the other strings. Okay? So if your wrist is not straight, none of the tips I gave before are going to matter, because no matter what you do, the fingers are going to be pulled down into the other strings. Now see what happens when I lower my wrist. Everything comes out super clear. Let's go over all that. So we want our fingers right by the frets. We want the finger to contact the string at the top of the finger pad, right below the nail. We want our wrist to be straight and not up like this, okay? And we want our knuckles to be nice and arched. Because the more arched our knuckles are, the less actual squeezing pressure that we need to put. Because remember that an arch is a very strong, solid structure. Sweet. All right, I hope that helped you with the E minor. Let's try the B flat. The same finger placement rules as in the E minor are going to apply, but we also have to use a bar. We're going to start with the bar. You want your pointer finger to be as straight and as flat as possible. Think, instead of an arch, it would almost be better to have it like this, okay? As straight and as flat as possible. And then you want that pointer finger that you've got straight and flat, right, to be parallel with the fret. So what you don't want is to have the finger be curved or hooked in any way, because that's going to yank all of your fingers into the opposing strings, and it just, we all know how discouraging it can be to want to play a chord and have it sound, right? So we want to have our finger be as flat and straight as possible and put it parallel to the fret right here. And see if you can get those out as clear as a bell. The straighter and flatter you've got it, the easier it's going to be to get enough pressure on the neck to to play both notes at the same time. The next task is a little bit trickier. We have to have that nice straight pointer finger on there and get the middle finger on using those finger placement rules from before. So we need the finger to contact the string, close to the nail bed. We need the finger to be arched while this finger is straight and flat. This might take a little bit of getting used to for you as far as, physiologically speaking. And then the ring finger needs to go on here without disturbing this middle finger note. Now I find if you've got the pointer straight, these two should fall into place pretty easily. Now if your finger is more curved like this, it can still be done, but it's a little trickier. If my wrist is too high, my finger pads are going to be muting the other strings. It's not going to sound good. So straight wrist, straight flat pointer, and have these on the neck in that ideal finger positioning that we described. And just tool around with that until you can get all of those variables to happen at one time. I'm going to give you a couple of tips just to work on this chord. You could also not start with the bar and start with the other two fingers instead, and then see if you can get that pointer finger on there. As with any bar, if you can kind of get the pointer finger to land more on the side, that's the bonier part of the finger, and it will be easier to get that pressure and that evenness using that part of the hand. One more tip for that B flat chord, you could always move it higher up the neck where the frets are closer together, and just gradually move it down. Keep practicing it like that. Okay, let's talk about the B minor. This is a tough one, and luckily for us, there is an easy way to play it. If we don't want to do the full version, we can always just put our bar across the second fret on these 3 strings, and then mute the 4th string with our pointer. Boom, B minor chord. But some of us, we want that extra note in there, and here's how we're going to get there. Just like with the last chord in any bar, we want to use a little more of the side. So not like this, of course, because that's going to pull everything out of whack, but just orient it a little more to the side. Roll it a little bit to the side where it's going to be a little bit bonier. And it's going to be easier to get that squeezing pressure on there. So once you get that set up, my next piece of advice would be to let the pointer stick up a little bit over the neck. Okay? If we stop that finger here, to me this almost puts a strain on the hand. See how it's like right below the 4th string? To me, I feel like I almost have to reach my ring finger farther than if I have my pointer up here. This just feels easier to me. So when you're playing this chord, feel free to get your pointer finger sticking up over the neck a little bit. I've got my middle finger supporting it, right? Not like a crazy squeezing pressure or anything like that, but it's there. And then our same rules for any kind of finger placement on the ukulele will apply to the ring finger. We want to be right here, right under the nail bed, as arched as we can get it. Okay? I want to point out one kind of subtle detail here. I have this side, kind of the karate chop side of my hand, is very, very close to the neck while I'm playing this chord. If that part of the hand is very far away, this bar, look what's happened to my pointer finger. It's going to be impossible to make good contact with that finger. So we need to have this sort of area of the palm closer to the neck than we might normally for, say, a G chord, where it's very far away, or a C chord. We want to have that part of the hand very close to the neck. My last recommendation, and this applies to all of these chords, would be to not practice them all in one session. You want to avoid straining your hand. It's actually counterproductive to do that. I'd recommend doing an A minor day, a B flat day, a B minor day, and then you might look for a song that has the E minor and the B minor in it. Practice that song. That way you're not just practicing chord back to back. If you follow the tips I provided in this video, you will see results. To make it even easier to keep track of what you're practicing, I have made a free PDF checklist you can find in the description of this video to make it super, super easy to remember each step for playing each chord. You can check that out down below. Thank you so much for choosing to learn with me today. If you found this video useful or educational, please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment down below to let me know about any topic you might like me to cover, any song you might like me to do a walkthrough for. And until next time, happy practicing.